Live from Downing Street, this is BBC News. Andy Burnham officially becomes the UK's next Prime Minister, promising a new direction for the country.
Let's build a new national sense of unity, of common purpose and positivity.
This morning he met the King at Buckingham Palace and was asked to form a government. Sir Keir Starmer leaves office saying he believes the UK is in a better position than it was when he took over.
It has been the privilege of my life to serve you and this great country as Prime Minister. And I am confident that Britain is now stronger and fairer than it was 2 years ago.
Andy Burnham is about to begin choosing who will fill the all-important cabinet positions. We will bring you those announcements live. Very good afternoon. Welcome to Downing Street. I'm Christian Fraser, where we are waiting over the next few hours for Andy Burnham to make those cabinet announcements. And of course, we will be looking at all the main issues through the afternoon that are now in the in-tray. The man who calls himself Andy, a normal bloke from Greater Manchester, is inside number 10, starting his first day as Prime Minister. But let's be clear, you don't walk through that door as Prime Minister by being ordinary. You don't orchestrate what amounts to a bloodless coup without being a player. And yes, a little Machiavellian. In the weeks and months ahead, he must prove he can be both. The man of the people who promises to deliver for the country, the space to breathe, his words, and also the operator who from the very beginning will surely disappoint and frustrate some within his own party. But time is not on his side. The electorate is impatient, and the man who for now will be at the peak of his powers needs to hit the ground running, starting with those cabinet appointments. Here he is on the steps of Downing Street earlier this afternoon, setting out the programme for change. There were no notes, there was no lectern. Shades in delivery, I thought, of David Cameron's arrival here in 2010 and a recognition that as the fifth Prime Minister in 4 years, politics is failing to deliver. This, he said, will be a circuit breaker for Britain, a moment for fundamental change. Within the next year, said the new Prime Minister, he will set out an economic model for Britain, and the work on that will start immediately. Cheers and applause then as he arrived here in Downing Street this afternoon. Plenty of hollering and whooping. The footballer Peter Reid was here, who campaigned for him in Makerfield. So too many of those who had pledged their loyalty to the last incumbent, Sir Keir Starmer. Let's hear then what Andy Burnham had to say in his first speech as Prime Minister.
I am acutely conscious that I am the sixth person in the last 10 years to walk up this street. The seventh Prime Minister since 2016, making this a moment for reflection and new resolution. It requires my generation of politicians to raise our game and rise to the new challenge. Britain needs to show the world that we can regain our stability once again. And that is our challenge, to make politics work, to make it work better. I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better. We will be. We will make this moment a circuit breaker for Britain, bringing forward the biggest changes in the last 40 years. A new political model and a new economic model. In the 1980s, Britain took some wrong turns. Political power was centralised, economic power privatised, large parts of the country deindustrialised, and they still haven't recovered. Many feel as though they're still in decline, and they don't have the ability to turn things around. And that's why we will change politics.
Yeah, what is remarkable about this transition of power is how calm and dignified it is. And yet there is enormous gravity to the situation. Let me show you some of the pictures from today. Sir Keir Starmer leaving Number 10 on his way to the palace. There he is meeting the King, and how quickly power disappears once you've announced your resignation. Then Andy Burnham, just barely an hour later, arriving with his wife Marie-France Van Heel, then getting out of the vehicle there, going through the baggage entrance. There's a lot of refurbishment going on at Buckingham Palace at the moment, but you can see there Andy Burnham dispensing with the T-shirt in his suit and tie today, as they were taken in by the palace staff to meet the King for the very first time. And then returning here, of course, to Downing Street to form a new government. There is the picture of the King and the new Prime Minister in the rarely seen Chinese dining room. That was the picture of the first handshake. A very special relationship, of course, between the Prime Minister and the monarch, always in that room when they meet for their weekly get-together. There are things that a Prime Minister can say in private. So that is the beginning of that new relationship, and one that many Prime Ministers, Alex, value very highly.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, this is Andy Burnham taking office, trying to set out his own priorities for government here, but nonetheless conscious that he is the Prime Minister of the country and there are responsibilities that come with that role that he is going to have to address. And the minute he walks through those doors in Downing Street, having given that speech just outside to the hordes of press and media who are here to see him, he's going to be presented with the reality of governing. And one of those things is about what he does to make sure the national security of the country is safe. As much as he might want to focus on the domestic, the foreign policy agenda is clearly crucial to a Prime Minister as well.
Yeah, and the fifth Prime Minister in 4 years, the King getting used to this. But in those weekly audiences that a Prime Minister has with the King, we shouldn't forget that because of the level of seniority of the King as the head of state, there are things in that room you can discuss that you can't discuss with anyone else, not even people here in Downing Street.
With the knowledge of absolute confidentiality, you know, because do you think about the late Queen and the Prime Ministers that she would have met and engaged with and perhaps shared the sort of wisdom of her years of experience in that role? King Charles, who's been such a senior figure of the country for so many years, you know, can he impart any wisdom or helpful tips or advice, all safe in the knowledge that it never leaves that conversation? I think that is the real difference. Andy Burnham's been careful to keep his inner circle tight right now, but we know in government a lot of the decisions are often leaked out, not those conversations with the monarch.
Just very quickly on that, tighter than a trap. I mean, it is remarkable that we're sat here, poised, ready for the announcement. We've not had a resignation letter. We have no steer on who's going into the top jobs, the big offices of state. That is remarkable.
It's extraordinary, and a marked difference from what we've seen from previous administrations of different party colours recently. He's called it the black box, a very small inner circle of advisors and allies that Andy Burnham has kept deliberately very close while he's taking these really crucial decisions. Not much is leaked at all. Can he keep that up as he now becomes Prime Minister with a much bigger team? He clearly wants to, but that could be a challenge.
Yeah. We will continue to watch. Let's bring in the former Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn. I want to refer to something he said, Jeremy, in the past hour or so. He said he wants a break from the policies of recent decades, from neoliberalism and trickle-down economics. Do you feel vindicated?
I welcome that, and yes, because trickle-down economics has failed this country. The levels of poverty are appalling. The levels of inequality are totally shocking. Billionaires owning a quarter of the nation's wealth is really not acceptable. So Andy has a very big agenda there. I hope he's able to fulfill it, because clearly a lot more detail is needed, and we haven't yet had any ministerial announcements. But the first one is interesting. Calling for an end to rough sleeping and homelessness, absolutely the right thing to do. That'll mean a lot of resources have got to go straight away to local authorities. I hope he will also recognise that also means taking on some very big vested interests, such as rent regulation in the private rented sector, as well as proper council house building, not part building and part sale on sites that become available for development. There's an awful lot of issues there he's got to address, but he will know that.
He's talked about having another crack at welfare reform and social care. One of the big things in his in-tray is, of course, the future of Thames Water, which you will have an interest in as a London MP. Do you think there is the money in the kitty to renationalise all the public utilities?
Yes, there is, because the nationalisation that's required of Thames Water and the other water companies for that matter should be paid for by buying the companies, but also setting a share price based on the costs that have been placed on the rest of us by the clean-up after the mess that they've made, excessive profits that have been made, excessive bonuses have been paid. And so I think the cost is something that is essential, because we cannot go on not controlling a basic, absolutely basic, essential human need of water. 72 billion has been taken out of the water industry by profits ever since privatisation started. That money could have paid for an awful lot of improved systems and redevelopment. Instead, what are we doing? Polluting seas and rivers. It's shocking. They've got to come back into public ownership. But I mean public ownership, not just public control.
I've got to ask you about Gaza, because I know it's something you've campaigned on for many, many years. He said Labour and the former Prime Minister had made a mistake in their response to the war. What would you like to hear different from him in his approach to the Gaza problem?
Acknowledging they made a mistake over Gaza is a very important step forward. But it also requires, I think, an examination into the way the whole policy is developed on Gaza. I have a private member's bill before the House for a Gaza inquiry, a public inquiry, because somehow or other, Britain has ended up being on the wrong side of the International Court of Justice, International Criminal Court, the wrong side of morality, while 73,000 people have been killed in what is an act of genocide by the Israeli forces against the Palestinian people. I think he's got to change policy on arms supplies and security sharing with Israel.
Sorry, I think my line is just breaking out, Jeremy, but let's try and persevere. I mean, there's already been a party backlash over the appointment of Shabana Mahmood to number 11. Some people on your side of the party would have preferred Ed Miliband. What about the reforms that she put in place with regards to immigration? Many Labour MPs would now want to kill those off if she is moved to another job.
I think Shabana Mahmood's tenure as Home Secretary is one that has brought consternation and horror to many people in our country, particularly people working in the health and care sector, who are suddenly being told that indefinite leave to remain isn't really indefinite leave to remain, it's something different. This idea of earned settlement and earned citizenship. She's got to drop that. They've got to drop that straight away. Now, if she's no longer Home Secretary, the incoming Home Secretary can obviously undertake those changes. I know a lot of MPs, Labour, yes, but also other parties as well, and certainly all of the independent MPs, really are determined to get this whole policy changed. You can't keep on appeasing reform and not expecting reform to grow as a result of it. You've got to stand up against reform. There are arguments about immigration and migrants working in our public services are complete nonsense. Everybody knows the NHS and the care system relies on people that have migrated to this country and made a fantastic contribution to our society.
Jeremy Corbyn, very grateful for your time this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for that. There are party leaders that have been responding to Andy Burnham becoming Prime Minister. Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, has written to him this afternoon saying she wishes him every success, but it was her role, her job, to hold him to account. She has promised to work with him in the national interest to find savings from the benefits bill. First Minister of Wales, Rhonda Iorwerth, has urged Mr Burnham to go further with devolution for the UK nations, not to bypass the Welsh Parliament, and he called for an early meeting. I congratulate Andy Burnham, he said, on his appointment as Prime Minister, which presents an opportunity to redefine the relationship between the Welsh and UK governments. The Scottish First Minister, John Swinney, has pushed for action on the cost of living. He said, I congratulate Andy Burnham on his appointment as Prime Minister. This is a significant moment for the UK, and I commit to working constructively with him in order to improve the lives of people in Scotland. We'll bring you more reaction from Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland later in the programme. Well, earlier Andy Burnham gave something of an indication of his position on foreign policy, and he stands towards the war in Ukraine and towards President Zelensky. Have a listen.
And I'll be making very clear later today to President Zelensky that, you know, there is no change. I will be with him 100%, as Keir Starmer has been, and Keir has done really quite an incredible job in not just backing Ukraine, but being there in a personal way, and I will be absolutely there for him in the same way. I've worked with Ukrainian mayors over the last few years. I've built a network of support for Ukrainian mayors. I take all of that experience into my new role, and President Zelensky will be left in no doubt whatsoever that Britain's support is steadfast, it is resolute, it will be there for him, and I will be there for him personally too.
Andy Burnham speaking this morning in one of his first interviews at Shelter, and later here in Downing Street, pledging to put an end to rough sleeping in England. There are some who have offered him candid advice that he might want to focus more on his domestic policy than on foreign policy issues. Remember, Sir Keir Starmer earned the nickname Stay Away Keir, and there was a lot of focus on the fact that he was out of the country 40% of the time. That said, foreign policy will demand a lot of his attention, and already foreign leaders piling in to congratulate Andy Burnham on becoming the Prime Minister, seizing the opportunity to call for a closer relationship, particularly those within the European Union. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said she looked forward to working with him to strengthen the EU-UK partnership. Remember, the meeting they were supposed to have with Sir Keir Starmer was postponed. That will happen later in the year with Andy Burnham. For the security of our shared continent, she said, and the prosperity of people on both sides of the channel, we look forward to a closer relationship. The French President, Emmanuel Macron, has congratulated Mr. Burnham, saying he hoped they would deepen their relationship and give new momentum to the partnership between the UK and the EU. Certainly there is a closer partnership between the UK and France since Labour came to power. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will of course have a wary eye on just how much time Mr. Burnham devotes to it. Every success, he said, in addressing the challenges of today, adding that the foundation of the bilateral relationship is stronger than ever, and the two countries will continue, he says, to make each other stronger. He also added that he's looking forward to their phone conversation later today. I bet he is. The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz expressed his congratulations to Andy Burnham, stressing how Germany and the UK are already closer partners and looking forward to working together. Well, as I mentioned just a short time ago, the new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, was quizzed about his policies today at Shelter, and he talked specifically about ending rough sleeping here in the UK, as he hopes to implement his local policies in Manchester and expand them to the whole country.
But I am ready to lead. I know what I want to do. There's a reason why I'm here at the Shelter in Victoria this morning, an amazing shelter that supports people who are street homeless, people recovering from homelessness. It was the best place to start, to kind of see what is being done here, the lives that are being turned around. We ran a scheme every night, 600 beds, called A Bed Every Night, and we funded it through various different ways, but we were the only place that was doing it. And you won't be able to get the numbers down if you're the only place, and other cities, people are coming to Manchester. So it taught me that the only way is to do this together. Everybody pulling in the same direction, everyone in, as we did in the pandemic, because we did bring people inside in the pandemic. And that's what I'm saying as I go into government today. We did it then, we can do it now, get the basics right, put a care for people at the heart of everything that we do, and just get this country working as it should again.
Well, most of the messages that have come in from overseas have been by text or by social media. But of course, the one relationship we're all looking at closely is the transatlantic relationship. And Alex Forsyth, we're getting a steer from number 10 that he's already spoken to Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, this was first reported by one of the Washington correspondents from The Telegraph that his first phone call was with President Trump, and we understand that is the case, although we haven't had official confirmation or what they call a readout yet, which is where they tell you broadly how that conversation went and what the content of it was. But clearly, that relationship is going to be absolutely crucial. And Andy Burnham, in the interview he gave much earlier this morning before he took office, did say his first phone calls would be with President Trump and President Zelensky. Now, we know that Keir Starmer had to carefully navigate that relationship with the US president and initially was praised for how he handled it. Then there was disagreement over the position that Keir Starmer took on the war in Iran, and then Trump was very critical about North Sea oil and gas, and then what he calls windmills, wind turbines, of course. So it'll be really interesting to get a sense of how Andy Burnham approaches what is going to be a crucial relationship, even though he clearly wants to be focused on domestic issues. You can't ignore the President of the United States.
Yeah, no, indeed. And, of course, big implications for the use of British bases and for the energy policy in the North Sea. Maybe the President got the wrong end of the stick on that over the weekend, talking about them dancing in the streets in Aberdeen. I'm not sure the policy is going to change all that much from where Sir Keir Starmer was, but we'll watch that one closely too. Let's take a short break. Around the world and across the UK, you're watching BBC News. You know, it's a brutal old game, this politics thing. I was watching lots of people gathered here around number 10 this morning for the departure of Sir Keir Starmer, patting him on the back, shaking his hand, all smiles. But of course, many of those lined up behind him were those who wanted him out of office. And then fast forward just a few hours and some of those same people, some of those same Labour staffers back out here on the pavements, hooping and hollering for the return of Andy Burnham to number 10. Penny, for the thoughts then of the Prime Minister as he left Downing Street with his wife Victoria this morning. Here he is delivering his thoughts about what he achieved in the short 2 years he was in office.
My work is done. In 6.5 years, I took our party from a historic defeat in 2019, changed it so it was fit to face the country, and won a landslide general election victory in 2024. Since then, it has been the privilege of my life to serve you and this great country as Prime Minister. And I am confident that Britain is now stronger and fairer than it was 2 years ago. Our economy is stronger. Our public services are on the up, with the biggest fall in waiting times for 17 years. Children are being lifted out of poverty every single day. Immigration is down significantly. Our defence and security are on a far stronger footing, and our international reputation is greatly enhanced. Yet the thing I will always take away with me, the most humbling aspect of this job, is the front row seat you get to witness the greatest things of this country in action. To see every day immeasurable acts of resolve, grit, decency and compassion from people who serve our country, whether that's in their regimental colours, NHS scrubs, or simply the millions of people in their communities who volunteer their time and their effort to the ground beneath their feet.
I've just been hearing in the last few minutes from the former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn urging the Prime Minister to go further on welfare reform, on housing, to bring the public utilities into state ownership. What will the markets make of all that? I've been speaking to our business editor, Simon Jack.
They want someone who is, as Andy Burnham's indicated, going to stick to their fiscal rules, which is controls spending and taxes, and saying that we're going to only spend as much as we receive in taxes over the life of the Parliament on day-to-day spending. So that's key, and he's already indicated he's going to do that. Now, the sort of front runner at the moment is Shabana Mahmood, who a lot of people think has done quite a good job of getting a grip of a very difficult ministry. The Home Office in her time is seen as pretty tough on the right hand edge of the party, and markets tend to like that. Having said that, we have seen borrowing costs begin to edge up over the last few days, but that has as much to do with the rising oil prices as it does to do with political events here in the UK. So, a Chancellor who will basically be able to add up, take away and be tough, because there are some very significant trade-offs. If you listen to that speech, it felt very much like, I think you'll agree, Christian, that, we want to bear down on the cost of living for people. We want to give them some breathing space. That means making them feel less hard-pressed. Well, that money's got to come from somewhere. So where is that money going to come from? The corporate sector will be worried that they might be in line. Some people worried that capital gains tax might rise, so there'll be extra taxes on the cost of those investments. But you also mentioned the business department, and what we understand is that this will be a beefed up department and probably fold in some of the things that which are previously done in the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, and they will be there responsible for executing the industrial strategy. And what really stood out for me from the Burnham speech was a couple of things. One is we want to reindustrialise Britain. He basically pegs the deindustrialisation of the UK back to the 1980s and Margaret Thatcher, to reindustrialise that. And then also, and he's got some big decisions on things, for example, like the oil and gas industry, what happens to some of life's essentials, as he puts them, some big decisions to make about what to do with the water industry, in particular the UK's biggest water company, Thames, which is in dire financial straits. So yes, listen, we're waiting, like everyone else, to find out exactly who's on those, whose names will be on those doors. But I would say that the market reaction at the moment to all of this is pretty muted and has more to do with what's going on in the Gulf than it does to do what's going on behind number 10 and 11.
Simon Jack there. Those are the decisions, of course, for tomorrow. Today, Andy Burnham, this very hour, is coming to terms with the enormity of the job that he's just gone into. There will be briefings from his intel chiefs. He will be given the nuclear codes, the instructions to the captains of the nuclear submarines, the more pressing security issues of the day. All that takes precedence first. And then, of course, comes the cabinet appointments. Those appointments still to come this afternoon. Do stay with us. We'll bring you all the live news on that as they appear.
Hello there. A few of us may see a little bit of rain at times over the next few days, but I have to say the vast majority will not. Predominantly dry weather continuing through the rest of today, certainly, but a fair bit of cloud in places. We do have high pressure still in charge. This high centred to the west of us, so that will allow more cloud and a few splashes of rain into the northwest of the UK, and eventually into some eastern parts as well. As we go through this evening, the vast majority dry with some clear spells. We will see more cloud continuing to push into northwest Scotland, giving the odd spot of rain. We may just see a few showers just grazing the coast of East Anglia and the southeast of England. Temperature-wise, 11, 12, 13 or 14 degrees. So pretty warm start to Tuesday morning. Maybe just a few showers for the coast of East Anglia, the far southeast of England. Always more cloud piling into northwest Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland as well, giving just a few spots of rain. But for the majority through tomorrow, it's a story of patchy clouds, sunny spells. It will remain dry and temperatures down towards the south up to 27 or 28 degrees. Always cooler though further north and west, 16 there in Stornoway. Now Tuesday night into Wednesday, we bring this little weather front southwards. Again, that does bring the chance for a little rain in northern and eastern parts. The majority will stay dry. We do increase the chance of rain as we head towards the end of the week, particularly up towards the north and the west.
I'm Dwayne Fields and I'm on an epic adventure in Zambia. Join me as I take on the power of the Zambezi River, get up close with incredible wildlife, and make a splash on the edge of the mighty Victoria Falls. That's the travel show in Zambia on BBC News.
Ukraine has been increasing its drone attacks across Russia, trying to force it into peace talks. It's been hitting targets in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and now Crimea, which Russia annexed illegally 12 years ago. That land is very important politically and personally to Vladimir Putin. So how will he respond? Join us here on BBC News.
Join me, Yanina Ramirez, on my quest to uncover the secrets of the legendary city of Troy. On this Aegean odyssey, I'll be making new friends and having some surprising encounters. Watch World's Ultimate Adventures on BBC iPlayer.
I promise this isn't how I drive.
Action. The director can come over to me and say, hey, I just want to add a little jerk here or an extra bump there, and in a few clicks of a button, I can do that.
This is the forefront of the technology. Why do we want a cell phone network on the moon? There are no people there. There are no people yet.
What's in my hands are tiny, lab-grown brains. This is what everybody wants to get their hands on.
Oh, I've dropped it. This is a really significant change in the game.
What have you found already?
10 billion new genes?
There are currently tens of thousands of untreatable diseases with existing tools. We think we can make a dent in that.
This revolutionized all electronics.
Technology like this is part of what will accelerate the capabilities of the future.
We're developing and commercializing space-based solar power.
We expect to have biocomputers consume hundreds times less energy.
I'm part of something really major here that's never been done in video games.
Tech Now. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
Here at BBC Verify, we use forensic investigative techniques and tools to fact-check stories, verify information and counter disinformation. Using data analysis and the latest technology, our journalists examine the evidence and get to the facts. Watch our BBC Verify reports on the BBC News channel or go online to find out more.
You're watching a BBC News special from Downing Street. The headlines. Andy Burnham has officially become the UK's next Prime Minister, promising a new direction for the country.
Let's build a new national sense of unity, of common purpose and positivity.
This morning, the new Prime Minister met the King at Buckingham Palace and was asked to form a government. Sir Keir Starmer has left office, saying he believes the UK is in a better position than it was when he took over 2 years ago.
It has been the privilege of my life to serve you and this great country as Prime Minister. And I am confident that Britain is now stronger and fairer than it was 2 years ago.
Welcome back to Downing Street. Andy Burnham reassuring us this afternoon that he has a plan, and the plan will come thick and fast in the days and weeks ahead. But of course, all sorts of questions about the economic challenges he's facing and the reforms he has already promised. So let's pick up on a bit of that with Jonathan Cribb, who is Deputy Director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Let me just ask you about what he trailed in the Times today. He's talked about doing something about the frozen personal allowance. Can you help us understand how vast the bill would be were he to set about unfreezing that?
Well, the personal allowance has been frozen for a number of years now, and indeed there's plans for it to remain frozen through this Parliament. Unfreezing it would cost a significant number of billions of pounds. I don't have the exact number to hand, but it would significantly eat into the government's headroom that they have against their own fiscal rules, make everything a lot tighter. Frankly, tax cuts or spending rises that are significant are going to need offsetting other tax rises or spending cuts to stay within the fiscal rules which the government has set, which Andy Burnham has said he will do.
And yet, on top of that, he is saying, with regards to Thames Water, that he's going to put it into special administration or full nationalisation. The creditors are suggesting today they want to be paid out in full. What's the exposure to the taxpayer of that?
Well, the key thing here is going to be, is this going to be a better managed operation in public hands compared to private hands? I don't have that answer. The other question is again about how the extent to which people who own the company are compensated for it. Thames Water isn't worth very much money, so you know there's fewer worries about the kind of private property rights in that. But you know, any additional spending here needs to be accounted for.
Yeah, but he says he's bound by the tax pledges in the manifesto, and I've just set out a couple of things there that are going to cost a lot of money. I mean, given that, can he actually afford the changes that he's set out? And if not, then what gives?
Well, I don't have the numbers on how much what you do on Thames Water. He is bound by he says he's bound by the manifesto commitments not to raise the increased rates of income tax, VAT or national insurance. That being said, Rachel Reeves increased national insurance on employers despite the commitment not to. So, you know, that's an open question exactly how stringently that will be applied. If they do apply it stringently, it makes it harder to raise taxes, because those big three taxes, you can raise taxes by a little amount on a large number of people, raising a lot of revenue. If you rule them out, you have to look for tax increases that come for a large amount from a small number of people. And of course, those people who do pay that large amount extra are of course not going to like it.
Jonathan Cribb, thank you very much indeed for that. We will return to some of the announcements that he's made already on the economy, but let's focus for a second on the Cabinet, because over the next hour or so we're going to start getting lots of appointments, and Alex Forsyth, we are starting to get the resignations, and we've got a particular eye on those within the last Cabinet who were close to Sir Keir Starmer.
Yeah, and one here, Steve Reed, who was an enormous Keir Starmer loyalist and ally. He went out to bat for the Prime Minister time after time. Most recently, he was the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, and he has posted on his social media, on X, that he is leaving government now and leaving that role. It's a two-page letter that he's written to Andy Burnham, who is, of course, now the Prime Minister. He sets out, as ministers quite often do when they leave government, some of what he sees as his achievements, not least the efforts to try and drive up house building, which is the real key plank of Keir Starmer's administration. And he says that serving as Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government has been the honour of his life. Although he's disappointed to be leaving government now, I wish your team, directed to Andy Burnham, every success. So we are now at the crunch point of Andy Burnham as Prime Minister on his first day, when we're going to see who is out and, crucially, who is in.
We've already heard from Andy Burnham today that this is one of his primary focuses. Social housing. He's had a lot to say about the right to buy. He's moved out Steve Reed. For him, it's going to be a very prominent role, filling that position. Who might he look to?
That is going to be one of the most crucial roles in this administration, not just because, as you say, he's pledged the biggest council house building drive since in the post-war period, but also because currently, and let's see if this is still the case at the end of the day, but currently that department also covers communities and local government. That would be at the centre of Andy Burnham's big devolution drive. And he's put that idea, handing power out of Westminster and Whitehall to the regions across the country, at the absolute heart of his economic plan. So potentially that department could be crucial. Who used to lead up that department? Angela Rayner. She was obviously the former Deputy Prime Minister and the Secretary of State for that department before she resigned over her tax affairs. I suspect she might quite like a return. That's not based on any intelligence other than the fact that she always seemed to be pretty keen on that job. But there are others that he may want to put in that really crucial position, people who've worked alongside him pretty closely as he's sort of come to this point of taking on the job in number 10. It's going to have to be a department with somebody with a bit of clout now if it's going to do what Andy Burnham has said and really transform the operation transition of government, but also the way the economy works in this country. Worth saying, it's no surprise that Steve Reed is leaving government. He was really, really close to Keir Starmer, and he's now written this letter confirming that he's on his way out.
And it's semantics, really, whether he's been sacked or whether it's a resignation. It's been framed as a resignation. There's no walk of shame up the street because this is a new chapter in the Labour story today, and so they will all be spared that. But in maybe in about half an hour's time, we're going to start seeing people walking up the street here, and that is when they are presented to the country as the new Secretaries of State.
Yeah, I think this whole process is going to be managed as best as it possibly can. This isn't a reshuffle. This is a new Prime Minister, a new administration, a new government. So it's slightly different to when a sitting Prime Minister moves around his cabinet in that way. And I think, there's been a real effort on the part of the Labour Party, actually, collectively, to try and manage this transition of power from Keir Starmer to Andy Burnham after what was an incredibly turbulent period for the party, when, remember, they were sort of openly briefing. There was quite a lot of hostility at one point. Now they're trying to present this really united front. I think Andy Burnham is going to try to attempt to manage this new cabinet appointment and the people that leave in the best way that he possibly can, because what he's not going to want to do is have a lot of upset people on the back benches. But despite all of that, despite the fact he's sort of at his political height at the moment, having come in on a surge of popular support within the Labour Party, new cabinet appointments can be a tricky business. It's never guaranteed it's going to go as smoothly as the incumbent of number 10 will hope. But this is a really crucial moment because we will start to really see where Andy Burnham's priorities are and who he thinks have got the right skill set and the right political priorities for the kind of government that he wants to lead.
Yes, it will tell us a story as we go through the afternoon. We'll come back to that. I know you're keeping a close eye on your messages. I've got some very sad news to bring you. We've just heard in the last few minutes that the former Liverpool and England star Kevin Keegan has died at the age of 75 after battling cancer. That coming from his family in the last few minutes. Newcastle United, of course, much-loved son of Newcastle United, had just released this statement. We are devastated to learn of the passing of Kevin Keegan, one of the most iconic, influential and deeply loved figures in our club's history. Kevin was more than a legendary footballer, says the statement, more than just a manager. He was the beating heart of Newcastle United for generations of supporters. As a player, he brought world-class talent, ambition and belief to St James's Park, helping to transform perceptions of what Newcastle United could be. And as a manager, he ignited our city. Kevin gave supporters hope, he gave them pride, he led a team whose style, spirit and passion captured the imagination of football fans around the world. He was so much more than just an entertainer. Let's take a look back at his life with Andy Swiss.
Got 2 men in front, that's Keegan. Keegan with a chance, and he has scored! Kevin Keegan has scored!
Few in football were as passionate or as popular. Kevin Keegan was a star with the big hair and even bigger talent.
Oh, is this it? What a magnificent goal!
And a man who always wore his heart on his sleeve.
I will love it if we beat them. Love it.
Keegan made his name at Liverpool in the 1970s, where his dynamism inspired a golden era.
Goals pay the rent, and Keegan does his share.
He was soon a household name, endorsing everything from slippers to, most famously, aftershave.
Nothing beats the great smell of Britain. Here, you try the muscle on my act.
And while his attempt at cycling on TV show Superstars didn't quite go according to plan, his football career did, as he moved to Hamburg and was twice named European Player of the Year. By then, he was England's captain and their talisman. But despite 63 caps, his only World Cup appearance in 1982 ended in frustration.
And it's wide!
That same year, though, he joined Newcastle United, the start of an enduring emotional bond.
It's Kevin Keegan! Who else?
The fans worshipped him as King Kev. And in 1984, in his final match, he produced the fairy tale ending.
Keegan! He's done it!
For all his talent, Keegan said it was his enthusiasm that the fans loved.
I mean, there's a lot of players who, over the years,
have looked a lot prettier than I do on a football field. But at the end of the day, maybe I've achieved a lot more than they have.
8 years later, Keegan returned to Newcastle as manager with spectacular results. In 1996, Newcastle were heading for the title, but as Manchester United reeled them in, his composure memorably cracked.
We're still fighting for this title, and he's got to go to Middlesbrough and get something. And I'll tell you, honestly, I will love it if we beat them. Love it.
Despite being pipped to the title, in 1999 Keegan was named the New England manager, but he lasted just a year and a half.
And England, totally unprepared, are totally embarrassed.
After defeat to Germany at Wembley, he resigned, saying simply, "I wasn't good enough." His managerial journey wasn't over though. After a spell at Manchester City, in 2008 he returned to Newcastle, and to a hero's welcome. Amid boardroom wrangling, he left only 8 months later. But the affection never wavered for this most endearing of figures. One of English football's all-time greats.
Kevin Keegan, who has died after a long struggle with cancer, as you were hearing. Let's just give you a little bit more detail on that statement from Newcastle United, who are saying, "We are devastated to learn of the passing of Kevin Keegan, one of the most iconic, influential and deeply loved figures in our club's history," say Newcastle United. Kevin was more than a legendary footballer and manager. He was the beating heart of Newcastle United for generations of supporters. And the statement goes on to say, as a player, he brought world-class talent, ambition and belief to St James's Park, helping to transform perceptions of what Newcastle United could be. Very sad news from the world of football there, of the death of Kevin Keegan. Let's go back to my colleague Christian Fraser in Downing Street.
Yeah, extraordinarily sad news. I once saw him play against Burnley at Turf Moor. He was really one of the iconic greats, and I remember being in Newcastle as a correspondent for the Newcastle Chronicle while he was manager, and I can tell you he absolutely transformed the city that year when they nearly beat Manchester United to the title. Rob Watson, as you can see, is with me here in Downing Street, a Liverpool fan. You've come at just the right time, because I know every Liverpool fan would want to pay tribute to Kevin Keegan.
Very much so. I'm definitely speaking as a Liverpool fan, not as a BBC political correspondent, where impartiality remains strict as ever, but it'll be an immensely sad moment for all of us who support Liverpool, and also for those of us, those who've supported other clubs that he played for. What was really interesting for me about Kevin Keegan, apart from his sort of artistry as a footballer, was that he was one of the first, one of the first of those sort of superstar players that Liverpool signed and developed, and who never seemed to kind of moan. There was no kind of rolling about on the floor pretending to be injured when he wasn't injured. Someone who just gave 100% all the time. And I guess that's why the fans, not just of Liverpool, but every club really, really liked him.
Yeah, I remember that I only mentioned the fact that he played at Turf Moor against Burnley, and in fact he scored that day, I remember, because he really was that superstar. We couldn't quite believe that he was playing at Turf Moor. He had that sort of star factor that many players of that era just didn't have.
No, absolutely. And of course, while it's commonplace today, we're talking in the wake of the World Cup, where you think of Lionel Messi, Mbappe. He was the Mbappe and Messi of our times, but without all of the social media, without all of the, some of the fun that went with it. He was more, after the game, you'd be sitting in the pub having a beer, fish and chips. There was none of this sitting in cold baths and doing all the kind of isotonic diets and training. He was a sort of superstar, but in a very kind of down-to-earth kind of way. And as for the haircut, well, see, I'm older than you. I remember all the haircuts of the 70s. Keegan to Toshak, Toshak to Keegan. It's another Liverpool goal.
They all had that big perm, didn't they?
Tremendous.
He'll be sadly missed. What a great... Rob, thank you very much indeed. I did just want to pay tribute to Kevin Keegan, because I'm sure the man actually in number 10, who albeit is an Everton fan, will feel very much the same way. And in fact, Peter Reid was here, the Everton footballer, today. I'm sure he'd have his thoughts on Kevin Keegan as well. Let's move back to the politics. There'll be plenty more tributes for Kevin Keegan through the afternoon. And speak to Tracy Brabin, who is the Mayor of West Yorkshire and, of course, former Labour MP. It's good to have you with us. Sorry to keep you waiting as we brought that very sad news. One of your fellow Metro mayors has just walked into number 10. What difference does it make having a Prime Minister who's actually been in the kind of job that you currently occupy?
Well, it's quite a day to be a mayor, that's for sure. And you saw with his change of style that he's going to bring a whole new, refreshed approach to the role. And I do think that's through his experience of being a mayor. And he spoke about common ground, about cooperation, and that's definitely one of the tools of a mayor, that it's place over politics. And it was good to hear back some of the things that he's been talking about in his speeches, and also that new news about his focus on ending homelessness. Because in our regions, we know that this is a scourge for our high streets and for the people experiencing homelessness. And his focus on affordable homes, getting people well, making sure that we can turn the tide on that for our communities, I think is great. So as mayors, we stand ready to help.
Well, Neil Kinnock talked this morning about fairness you can feel. What does that look like to people on the ground in West Yorkshire?
Well, the people have been waiting for 14 years plus for change after, really hard times. And I do understand why we were all, the public were all impatient for change. So we really welcome that focus on tackling the cost of living, where people will feel the change in their everyday life. Now, Andy obviously is focused on transport, has been had a big impact in Greater Manchester, but the mayors across the country are on the process, on the way to franchising buses. So you'll see that across the country, and driving down bus fares. He's also been very focused on rail as well, making sure people can get to good jobs and opportunities. But I think being able to use that experience that he had and then really get the power of the state behind him, I just think that's going to be an extraordinary moment. And we are really excited to be able to move forward with fiscal devolution. That was work that was started by Rachel Reeves and the Treasury, about how we can keep more of the money in our region, that we don't have to keep going back to the centre to ask for more. So those integrated settlements where we have all of the money that we need, but able to grow it from our local economies, because we know our businesses, we know the opportunities that are out there for mayors.
Tracy Brabian, I wish we could talk more, but there's plenty going on this afternoon. I'm sure we'll talk more in the weeks and months ahead. Thank you very much indeed for that. Before we go to the break, some important news, because we've just had another resignation.
David Lammy, Deputy Prime Minister and current Justice Secretary, is leaving government. He too has posted on his social media saying he's immensely proud of what we achieved in opposition and government, but he is out. Well,
let's dispense with the break, because this is much more important news. He has been a prominent figure and a prominent backer of Sir Keir Starmer. Him and Steve Reid now going, so it's all the loyalists who were there to the end for Sir Keir Starmer.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Steve Reid, who has departed government as the Housing Secretary, had a line in his resignation letter which I've now just had the opportunity to read, Christian, and he makes quite a pointed point about this. He says, Keir Starmer showed loyalty to me by appointing me to his cabinet. I make no apology for returning that loyalty. It's what's expected of functioning teams. I hope those who did not show loyalty to Keir will now show it to you, meaning Andy Burnham. So a fairly pointed point as from Steve Reid, a very close ally to Keir Starmer throughout this whole difficult period as he leaves government. David Lammy, he's saying that he's going to return to the backbenches, work as an MP, continue to give his support to this government. I don't think there's any huge surprise in these two figures being some of the first to leave government, but Andy Burnham has made a point that he wants to build a team that represents all the different parts of the Labour Party. So what's going to be crucial is to see who he chooses to keep and who he chooses to promote, and whether people in the Labour Party actually feel that that is a representative government when it's all shaken down and we get all of those final appointments. It's very early stages.
I was saying earlier, and I think you agreed, that the shape of the appointments this afternoon will tell us an awful lot about the policies still to come that have not yet been announced. And of course, David Lammy, besides being the Deputy Prime Minister, was also the Justice Secretary. And one thing that Andy Burnham has said he didn't necessarily agree with was the reforms to jury trials. Does that suggest to you that that policy is going to be binned?
Quite possibly. I mean, we just don't know. It's going to depend who comes in and takes that job on. And of course, they're still going to have some of the challenges with the backlog in the courts and the challenges in the prison system, because there's also been an active debate about the early release of some prisoners. So what's going to happen with that policy area? That's going to be dependent on who comes in as Secretary of State for Justice. Similarly, with the Home Office, where we know there's been quite a lot of controversy over Shabana Mahmood, the current Home Secretary's plans to reform the immigration system, with some people, though not all people, in the Labour Party expressing some concern about those. Who will Andy Burnham choose to appoint as Home Secretary? What will that mean for immigration reforms? Let me just bring you a line that David Lammy said from his resignation statement that he posted on social media. Quite an interesting point, Christian. He said, David Lammy, "I would have been proud to continue serving in Cabinet, but a new Prime Minister is entitled to build his own team. I wish Andy Burnham and the new Cabinet every success." A little indication that perhaps not all the people departing government wanted to give up their jobs. This is a bruising business at this point, and how Andy Burnham manages it is going to be pretty crucial to how he's received in the Labour Party, because at the moment there's a lot of support for him, but it's not easy making these decisions when you're actually in number 10 at the helm.
The resignations are coming thick and fast. We'll continue to watch as they appear on social media. Alex, for the moment, thank you. Let's bring in Luke Trill, Executive Director of the polling agency More in Common UK. Thank you for being with us, Luke. The mood in the country, I suspect, is, oh, well, here we go again, the fifth Prime Minister in 4 years, nothing changes. I just wonder if that very low bar is actually a good thing for an incoming Prime Minister.
Well, look, there's no doubt that public expectations are low. In fact, we asked people just before Andy Burnham came in, did people think that Andy Burnham would be able to improve their lives, or the Labour government under him? And 41% said they thought he would. That's down from the 54%, the majority who thought that Keir Starmer might be able to improve their lives. So it's fair to say that the past 2 years has eroded optimism somewhat. But that said, and we saw this in Makerfield, there is no doubt that Andy Burnham has an ability to communicate in a way that perhaps Keir Starmer struggled with, and that he might be able to get the Labour Party, if not a full reset, a rehearing to rebuild from.
I was listening to the Labour peer, Deborah Mattinson, earlier this morning. She's been doing some focus group work. She says that from her research, 45% say they want real change within 3 to 6 months. There's a thirst for Andy Burnham to move quickly. And I wonder if already out of the blocks it's a mistake to just let Parliament drift away for 6 weeks.
Well, look, Deborah is absolutely right. In fact, the public's attitude for radical real delivery has actually grown over the past 2 years. People want change now. And I think that Andy Burnham has a very small window. It could be as small as a couple of weeks to show that he gets it. So the public are going to want to know, what are you going to do on cost of living? Obviously, they know that it can't be solved overnight, but he's going to have to show some early leg on this. He's going to have to show, look, we're doing this to make things cheaper. Obviously, we might do more in the budget, but the time for action is now. There isn't time to spend the summer sort of planning and deliberating. I think the next 2 weeks, and he did hint at this in his speech earlier, are going to have to be a series of policy announcements to convince the public that under him, the government can meet their priorities.
We heard from Reform UK's Robert Jenrick a little earlier in the programme, who said they'll be watching very closely the language on immigration and asylum. How narrow is the path that Andy Burnham has to walk here with the public?
Well, look, immigration is regularly a top 3 concern in our polling for the public. It comes up very often in our focus groups as a top issue. People both want to know that overall levels of immigration are being controlled, and in particular, they want the government to deliver on that promise to stop the boats. And if you looked at the reforms which Shabana Mahmood, what she still is, Home Secretary, we don't know what job she might get next. Her reforms, I think, were a step in that direction of rebuilding public confidence. And I think Andy Burnham is going to have to reassure the public that under him that focus will continue, even if the shape of those reforms needs to change.
We'll have to leave it there. Luke Trill, thank you very much indeed, because we've got another announcement, Alex.
Yeah, coming thick and fast now, Christian. Peter Kyle, we understand, has been sacked as Business Secretary. He hasn't posted any official confirmation yet, but that is our understanding. He is out of government as well, following Steve Reed, Housing Secretary, and David Lammy as Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary. 3 Keir Starmer loyalists among the first to be out of government as Andy Burnham shapes his new administration. And these are big jobs to fill. Justice, business, these are housing. These are real key areas in the administration. It'll be really interesting
There was some
to
speculation that Jonathan Reynolds might make a comeback to government.
I'm just going to interrupt you because Rachel Reeves, up until a few moments ago, the Chancellor, has posted on social media saying, "I wish the very best of luck to my successor, Andy, and his cabinet. You have my full support. I continue to play my part in helping this Labour government deliver the change the country needs from the backbenches." So confirmation, not again a surprise, but a huge thing. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, they're posting on social media that she too has
that
left
is news
government.
indeed, because there was speculation that she might be offered another job. There'll be all sorts of focus in the coming hours whether she turned down another department.
Yeah, and we just don't know. So we've got her full statement here where she talks about the privilege having that job in number 11. You'll remember the first female Chancellor, something she got a round of applause for when she took office just a couple of years ago. She's talking about her record on the economy. She doesn't clarify next steps. She does say that Andy Burnham and his team have her full support. And she does say this line, "I'll continue to play my part in helping this Labour government deliver the change the country needs." But it will be interesting when we get the full picture of how this new appointment process of Andy Burnham's cabinet emerges, about the conversations that have taken place. Were there any job offers that people didn't want to go to? Did people voluntarily leave before they were pushed? We just don't know at this stage, Christian. And the management of this reshuffle will be key, because what Andy Burnham doesn't want is unhappy